Would you like me to seduce you?
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, he walks into mine.
Why is the rum always gone?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
It's a trap.
Every town has an Elm Street.
Trust no one, Mr. Miller.
Nice night for a walk.
Groovy.
Hey guys, welcome to the Celluloid Fiends podcast. As always, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. And you know what? We'd also appreciate if you went to the iTunes Store or Google Play, Podcast Addict, wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe, as well as leave us a rating and leave us a review. You can follow us on Twitter at Celluloid Fiends, as well as on Facebook at Celluloid Fiends. And you can follow me, Mo Long, at Mitchell C. Long on Twitter and Instagram, or at cupofmo.com, where you can read my reviews of films and a lot more. And as always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host.
What's up, Celluloid Fiends? It's Gabriel Orto. If you want to go ahead to Facebook and give us a like, that would be just fantastic.
And tonight we are talking about the revered childhood classic known as Mac and Me. So this movie came out in 1988, and it was directed by Stuart Raffle. It had a budget of $13 million and made a measly $6.4 million at the box office. It currently holds an impressive 0% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes with a 38% audience score. And, you know, I gotta say, I felt the 0% was a little harsh. It wasn't that bad.
I don't think this movie is that bad at all. I think this movie deserves more credit where credit is due.
I agree. So this movie is very similar to E.T. The plot goes as such. A NASA spacecraft lands on some undisclosed planet to collect soil and rock samples, but it ends up picking up a lot more than just sediment. The craft sucks up 4 aliens before it heads back to Earth, and upon its arrival, the alien family escapes from a government facility, but the youngest member of the family is separated from his parents and his sibling, and ends up in a van owned by the Cruz family, which consists of Eric, his older brother Michael, and their mother Janet. And they're just moving to California from Illinois. Initially, only Eric believes that this alien exists, and no one in his family can see it. But then he and his new friend Debbie, who's his next door neighbor, trap the alien in a vacuum, name the adorable little creature Mac, and Eric, Michael, Debbie, and Debbie's sister Courtney then proceed on a quest to reunite Mac with his family.
And several Coke products in McDonald's restaurants.
Oh yes, lots and lots of product placement. So Gabe, you picked this. Why did you pick Mac and Me?
Because I wanted to do like a lighthearted sci-fi movie. And I remember this movie from when I was a kid. I remember going to Blockbuster, looking at the box, and I told my dad to let me rent it. And I remember liking it as a child, not knowing that this was blatant advertisements. But I really didn't care. I thought it was funny. I thought there was heartwarming parts about it. And it's just a movie I hadn't seen in a while.
And so the last time you watched this, you were a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, so this was my first romp. And I gotta say, I enjoyed it. I didn't really know a lot about it. I'd kind of heard rumors that it was an E.T. ripoff, and it kind of was an E.T. ripoff. And in fact, it's sort of like one part bargain bin E.T. story, and then one part just like extended commercial, mostly for McDonald's, but also Coke products and Skittles.
Yes. Skittles was definitely not as much as the other two, though.
No, but yeah, so E.T. was munching on, what was it? Reese's Pieces?
Yeah.
And so what Mac and Me does is it sort of swaps the Reese's Pieces for Skittles.
Yes.
And you know what? There was even I feel like there was even product placement for Sears.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because the mom works there, and it very prominently shows in the background the Sears facade. And there's even that weird chase scene through the Sears. Which like, it almost turned into like a Three Stooges sketch or like Laurel and Hardy movie at that point. Yeah, and then of course the Coke products, and Coke somehow revives the aliens.
Yeah. Like the kids were like, "Oh, it must be like what they drink on their own planet."
Yeah, cue the Coke polar bear sitting on their home planet, just chugging a fucking Coke. Yeah, but no, I think it was I think ultimately it was pretty heartwarming, and even experiencing this as an adult, I think I appreciated it, even though I didn't have the same nostalgia factor that you did, for example.
Like, I just wanted to see if this movie stood the test of time, and in ways it did, in ways it didn't. Like, it really didn't. I wasn't amazed by it like when I was a kid, but it definitely had its own niche, and it didn't take itself too seriously. And I thought it was just a genuine good watch. Like, I'd watch it again, no problem.
Yeah, same here. And the backstory, the whole McDonald's element, I think is actually really interesting because the producer, R.J. Lewis, had collaborated with McDonald's on some ad campaigns prior to the film being made. And some of the proceeds for the movie actually went to Ronald McDonald Children's Charities. So there actually was like a pretty solid and respectable McDonald's tie-in.
Right.
But I do think at times it was a little blatant, especially with the character being named Mac. And then at the end, during the end credits, it says Ronald McDonald as himself. And yeah, I feel like there were ways that you could have sort of watered that down a little bit. Like the sister Courtney, she worked at McDonald's in the movie, and she didn't need to wear her uniform around for most of the fucking movie.
There was maybe only a scene or two where she was not wearing her McDonald's uniform.
It was pretty blatant. And then there was, of course, the birthday party at McDonald's, which I don't remember going to any birthday parties at McDonald's. I remember going to birthdays at Pizza Hut, but when we were watching, I think you mentioned this was a thing. People had birthday parties there.
In the 80s and early 90s, I do remember this. I'm a little older than Mo. So it was either me or one of my friends had a birthday party at McDonald's. And Ronald McDonald was there, and we got to play in a play place. And that it was all nice. But then again, unlike Mac and Me, there was no choreographed dance numbers.
Oh my god, yeah, that was one of the most entertaining and yet ridiculous moments in this entire movie. Yeah, so they roll up to McDonald's for this birthday party, right? And there's just this choreographed dance scene going on in the parking lot.
And inside the McDonald's.
Yeah, and there were so many details too. I want to say they were like football players or something, and there were ballerinas.
There was like people dressed as ballerinas, and there was like 3 or 4 guys just in football uniforms. I'm like, what's with the guys in the football? They're like, hey, we're football players and we're dancing in McDonald's. Like, I don't get it.
So yeah, I think I sort of understood what they were trying to do. Maybe I'm giving Mac and Me way too much credit here and reading far too much into the scene, but I suspect it was sort of slipping into the kind of ad mentality and trying to posit McDonald's as the hit place to go for any occasion, whether it's your birthday or after your dance recital or after the big game or whatever.
But even after playing a football game, they usually go in the locker room and change their clothes. They don't go in their uniforms to McDonald's.
No, it made no sense. And random people aren't just joining the choreographed dance number. No, they're not. But this reminded me actually. That scene reminded me a little bit of Teen Witch. Have you seen Teen Witch?
I have not seen Teen Witch.
But you've probably at least heard of it. And there's one very infamous scene. It's the top that scene where these characters just randomly start rapping. And yeah, it sort of reminded me of that, where it's just a super random scene that was kind of took you out of the film a little bit. Because yeah, okay, I had to suspend my disbelief because they're aliens. But I can accept aliens. I can accept extraterrestrials, but choreographed dance numbers in the parking lot at McDonald's.
It was a bit much.
Yeah,
And
that was a bit much.
Not to mention, Mac is also in a teddy bear costume, and he's doing dance moves too.
Oh man, okay, we need to talk about this teddy bear costume. I think it was because Eric was he was a Chicago Bears fan.
It was a Cubs mascot.
That's what it was. Okay,
it was a Cubs mascot. He had stuffed Cubs mascot, and they had to hide Mac, and they took the stuffing out of the stuffed animal, put Mac inside, and then they brought Mac to the party, but the mother's like, "Oh, your teddy bear is moving around." He's like, "Oh, he's one of those fancy new computer teddy bears. He just got a new microchip." And that's how they kind of danced around that one.
Yeah, that scene. First of all, the bear costume is just the stuff of nightmares, and it almost looked more like a rabbit. But then this is a recurring theme throughout the entire film. Adults and parents are just so oblivious to everything. So at the beginning of the movie, when Mac first shows up, the family wakes up, and the mom is super pissed because there are all these trees and bushes and stuff in their living room, and she blames the kid, Eric, who's in a wheelchair. And for one, no one would have been able to get that many trees inside without help.
Right.
But two, did she expect that he just got up out of his wheelchair and dug all the bushes and trees up and brought them inside? It made no sense.
I don't think it would be easy for a kid not in a wheelchair to do this. The kid was like maybe 8, 9 years old. This kid is not picking up trees. This kid is not bringing in whole bushes. He's not any kid that age is not capable of doing that within a 6-hour span, because that's about the time 6 to 8 hour span. That's the sleep time.
Yeah, I mean that would have been a lot of work for an adult, much less a kid. So yeah, I don't know what she was thinking.
She was like, "Eric, how can you do this? This was so horrible." And he's just standing there in his he's sitting there in his wheelchair. He's like, "Well, what the fuck?" Well, like, I could fucking do this, Ma? Come on. There's a little guy wandering around our house. Listen to me. She's like, "Oh, you're just being stupid. You're trying to make excuses."
But, I did really appreciate that his character was he was a kid.
Right.
That happened to be in a wheelchair. I think actually this is some of the best representation of someone in a wheelchair in a film, because like that didn't define his character at all. And actually the actor himself, I think his name's Jade Caligari, so he is in a wheelchair in real life. So yeah, I thought that was really great that he actually uses a wheelchair in real life, as opposed to I've seen so many movies where it's just an actor who doesn't need a wheelchair that's in a wheelchair.
Right. And I feel like this movie, this character, it could have been played with a kid not in a wheelchair. But I feel like there's a possibility that they put out a casting call for kids, and they saw this kid act, and they cast him as the role and wrote the role around him. They had able-bodied kids, they had handicapped kids, everything. So I feel like they didn't make the role for him. He made the role, which I think is amazing. it's kind of another instance I remember of this is I don't watch the show, but I know the character that Peter Dinklage plays on Game of Thrones was not supposed to be like, it is not known that in the books it's not known that he's a little person. They casted him because of his acting ability, which I think is fantastic, and I love the way they portrayed this kid in the movie. I think he was just a fun-loving kid.
Yeah, I really liked his character, and I thought he sort of brought that character to life a lot. I don't think he was necessarily given like a ton of emotional material, and that's just something that I don't think there's a lot of in the film, emotional material. But yeah, I thought he gave a very compelling and inspired performance as this kid, and by the end of the film, you're just, as the audience member, you're rooting for him the whole time. Yeah, so I thought he did a great job and kind of carried the whole thing. But you know what? Without that wheelchair, we wouldn't have had one of the best moments, not just in Mac and Me, but in all of cinematic history, which is the infamous wheelchair off the cliff scene. So he's Eric sees Mac and he's chasing after him, trying to find him, and he loses control of his wheelchair and goes flying off of a cliff and lands in a lake. And it's one of the funniest scenes. Actually, when we were watching it, I think rewound so we could watch it again. Because it's not like the slow-mo dramatic fall. It's just like a really blurry fall, and you see this little blip
like,
in front of a cliff. and then Max saves him.
Yes, which is very nice. But I've seen people use this in like memes and stuff like that, like the kid falling out in the wheelchair off a cliff. I've seen it before. I forgot that it was from Mac and Me. But I think they could have done a little better. Like, I don't think it was meant to be as funny as it was, but it came off as the funniest part of this movie.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think it was supposed to be mostly dramatic with a little bit of comedy, but I don't think it was intended to be as just laugh out loud hilarious as it was.
But I don't think they realized back in the 80s how cynical our generation would end up being in 2019. It's like, I think in the 80s they thought like, oh no, the kid fell off the cliff. That's so... People were more compassionate back then. Now people are a little bit more cynical, and they can see the dark humor in that. It's like, oh, look at the kid in the wheelchair fall off the cliff.
But, you know, even in spite of any cynicism, it's really hard for this to be a dramatic moment because you know they're not going to kill the kid off at the beginning of the movie. You know he's not going to die. You know the alien's going to save him. So it was, yeah. It to me it didn't have the dramatic tug that it could have, because it was like, all right, this kid's not drowning right now. He's going to be just fine. Little alien will save him and he'll dry off. It'll be okay.
One of the things I really loved about the character of Mac is that he's never quite silent, and whenever he runs away, he just whistles away. He's like and I thought that was a very funny aesthetic of all of them. Because all the aliens, like, they communicate through whistling, which I think is interesting. But the way Mac carries himself is so hilarious.
Yeah, and even the character design was just very comedic, with sort of the semi-surprised look on his face the entire movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, in some ways I actually think this movie was kind of self-aware, because like at the end there's even a reference to, one of the characters makes a reference to I think it was the brother. Yeah, I think it was Michael. He made a reference to Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I think this was sort of self-aware in a way.
It definitely doesn't take itself too seriously.
No. So we talked a little bit about how this film has been memeified. Is this a cult film?
There's been a few movies that have been like this since we've started doing this podcast, Mo. And the last episode, the movie was like this. I think it's getting there.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts. I don't think it's quite a cult film, but I think it has the trappings of a cult film, and I think it's maybe even closer than, I think it was Life Force we were talking about,
Yes.
where I asked if it was a cult film. I think this might even be closer than Life Force, just with some of the memes, because even in the week after we watched Mac and Me, there is a push to storm Area 51, and someone posted, Gabe sent this to me, a picture from Mac and Me of the little kid Eric holding Mac and rushing down the street in his wheelchair, and it says like me with my alien running away from Area 51. And apparently, I think it's on like Conan, Paul Rudd and Conan have like some joke about Mac and Me.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, there's apparently some joke about it where I think it's like whenever Paul Rudd has a new movie out, Conan asks if they can see a clip of it, but every time he just shows the clip of Mac and Me, the wheelchair off the cliff scene. So yeah, it's like, it's a movie that's being memeified. The people that I've talked to about it,
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at that. That's hilarious.
yeah. So like, I think it's on the way to being a cult film, but I don't think it's there yet.
I think we should get this movie a Shout Factory release. I think it will be just fine. I think we get this a couple screenings. It'll get a couple laughs. I think with that, even maybe we can start getting some of these kids to the convention circuit. I want their autographs.
There already is a Shout Factory release.
Stop it.
There's a Shout Factory Blu-ray release of Mac and Me.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that have special art?
No. Maybe. No. I don't think so. No. But it does have some bonus features, including an audio commentary with the director and co-writer, as well as film historian Mark Edward Hugh. It has That Little Mac in the Sky, an interview with Stuart Raffle. Okay. Huh. All right. Well, it has some cool bonus features. You know, I might actually have to pick this up. This sounds pretty sweet.
How much are they charging for it on Shout Factory?
It is $19. That's a pretty reasonable price.
The Celluloid Fiends has been presented by
Shout Factory. Yeah, I do hope this movie kind of continues its path to cult status, because I think it deserves it. And yeah, you know what? It's a shameless ripoff of E.T. in some ways, but I do feel like there were some kind of original elements too.
I feel like there was definitely more comedy in this movie than E.T. was a very serious movie. There was funny parts, but I definitely feel this took a more comedic, cartoonish tone than E.T., which was a nice, fresh viewpoint for a story like this. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, and even the name Mac, yeah, okay, there's McDonald's, but it actually stood for Mysterious Alien Creature. So I did like that. It sort of tried to make it a little less commercially, and I did think the fact that it was the whole family stuck on Earth was kind of a nice differentiating factor between this and E.T., as well as the aliens having superpowers because they can apparently heal or destroy things with their hands and maybe do other things. I don't know.
They can also stretch really, really long.
Like Michael Jordan's arm in Space Jam.
Yes.
And
they can fit inside vacuums.
Yeah. So, yeah, in a lot of ways, it was almost like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's sort of their cartoonish nature. And, yeah, I was just very interested in kind of their backstory and where they came from, like what planet they were on, but I don't think any of that was necessary and would have fit in.
Well, if they would have made the sequel, you would have found that out, Mo.
Oh boy. Yeah, actually, so that was one of the minor gripes that I have, is this movie was ballsy enough to, at the end, announce, we'll be back. They announced a sequel at the end of this movie. And you know what? I probably would have watched a sequel, but like, come on. Don't announce a sequel until you know how you performed at the box office. And this movie made what? Half of the budget?
Yeah.
It made half the budget back. I mean, it's not quite, to return to Teen Witch, it's not quite that bad. Where that movie cost several mil and only made like $30K at the box office. But still, like, this was a bit of a flop. But clearly, it has found new life on home video. Tonight's episode, sponsored by Shout Factory. With that, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to keep talking about Mac and Me.
Okay, kids, let's get this dance contest going.
He's here!
What?
Mac, he's in the tennis suit.
He is? I don't believe this.
Yes, Sam!
Debbie, what's going on?
It's okay, everybody thinks it's just a toy.
Ugh.
Hi, Michael.
The thing I was telling you about, it's in the teddy suit.
Oh, no way, so cute.
Yeah, real cute. Listen, those guys were following us. They're here.
Well, what are we gonna do?
I don't know. Just keep him dancing. They'll just think he's a teddy.
Jumping in the city.
Okay, pick up the pace. That's very good, Kathy.
People may lie to impress you and wait around for your defeat. So hard to find someone who really cares, gives you all that you need. A friend who in the end is always there, who gives their heart right from the start. You know you can't get hurt staying down to earth when the pressure feels like more than you can take. Love can work living down to earth if you let it go with your heart and it won't break. Down to earth.
What's he doing?
I don't know.
Trust me, try and take it.
Where are you guys? Move it.
You know that nothing comes for free.
All right, come on, move it. Let's go.
Clothes don't matter, baby. Looks can fade away. What's inside makes a man.
Not hurting anyone.
You don't know what you're
Leave
getting
him
into.
alone. What's he done wrong?
Come on,
Get
back
him.
off. Back off.
What's he done wrong?
Hold on, Mac.
Get after them. Move it.
Hey guys, we're back and we are discussing the revered childhood classic, Mac and Me. So one thing I touched on a little bit was kind of comparing this to Teen Witch, and I just really think there's a so bad it's good vibe that permeates this in a number of scenes, like the dance scene in the parking lot and the wheelchair going off the cliff. But underneath some of that, I actually feel like this is a very well-made movie from a technical standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think the designs for the aliens, those were really well done. And I'd even say, this might be blasphemous to some listeners, but I'd say they were even on par with stuff like Gremlins or E.T.
I thought that the effects were fairly well done. I don't know, a lot of people would not agree with me, but I think that there's something to say for a movie that you still find entertaining with just no CGI. It's still the aliens are still very interesting to look at.
Absolutely, and the soundtrack was pretty solid. It had just some pop hits in there that I don't think I was too familiar with most of those, but one thing that really shocked me was during the opening credits, it had Alan Silvestri's name. And he's a very renowned composer. And I was kind of taken aback because most recently he's scored a number of the Marvel films, like most recently Avengers Endgame. But I looked at his filmography, and here are a few films that he scored before he did Mac and Me. He did Cat's Eye, Back to the Future, Romancing the Stone, and Predator.
Wow.
Which, those were all pretty big movies that he did, which came out before Mac and Me. So it's not like he was some unknown dude
doing shitty movies.
Exactly. And, no offense to anyone in this movie, but I don't think I knew many actors from this except you. I think it was you who said this, perhaps. There's a little kid in a car at the beginning who was in Salute Your Shorts, I think.
And he was also in Terminator 2, I think.
Yeah, you're right. He was.
So you looked that up, and he was that kid?
Yeah, it was that kid. So I thought that was kind of cool, but yeah, apart from that little kid who was in one scene at the beginning, most of the other actors and actresses in this movie I wasn't familiar with at all. So I just thought it was neat that you had Alan Silvestri scoring this movie that, I mean, it had a decent budget, but I don't think this was like a huge release at the time.
No. I think it was just trying to capitalize off of E.T.'s success, but in a more comedic fashion, and try to promote some corporate sponsors and maybe give some money to the Ronald McDonald House, which I don't think is necessarily a horrible thing.
No, I think that's an admirable quality, and I didn't realize that going in. But I do wanna talk about the end, because we keep discussing how comedic this is. So the end has this scene which starts out really funny, but kind of turns dark, where the alien family is mistaken as holding up a grocery store. So the cops show up, and there's a shootout. A gas station ends up blowing up, and Eric dies. So when we watched the movie, I was really confused how Eric ended up dead. And I assumed it was just the explosion nearby. Well, that's because the cut of this film that is most widely released nixes a scene where you see Eric getting shot. It is in the Japanese VHS release, apparently.
And it's not even like it is blatant. I've seen the cut of the movie, and he's basically rolling towards the situation, and then a cop shoots him in the chest, and he's dead, and he's still rolling.
Yeah. So it was kind of subtle. Like, even if you're watching the Japanese VHS release, you could totally miss that scene, that little segment. But I just was kind of taken aback when I saw that clip, I ended up just like Googling it and found it online because that was kind of ballsy to actually show a kid getting shot. Like most movies won't show a kid getting killed, even though you knew when he was dead that he was going to be brought back to life.
I think that they edited that obviously probably for ratings purposes.
Oh yeah.
Because if they would have showed that, it could have amped up the G or PG rating to easily PG-13 or R.
Yeah, because I want to say this was PG. It was PG. Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that would have kind of bumped it into a PG-13. And they were very heavily targeting families with this. This was
and
intended
children
as a family picture. Yeah. But I feel like there were a lot of laughs in there for adults too.
Oh, yeah.
Case in point. Although, with our maturity levels, I don't know if we're the best examples to use there. But yeah, that was just a very surprising scene for me. And then I feel like the end though slightly jumps the shark
a little bit with them becoming American citizens.
Yeah, it just sort of like transitions from they saved the kid to the aliens are becoming American citizens and driving.
Yeah, the father alien is now driving. It looks like some type of convertible. And they're like going on a family vacation.
So what would the sequel have been? Would it have been like the Griswolds, but aliens that don't talk and just whistle and drink Coke?
Got me sold.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I would have watched. I'd have loved a sequel to this. I would have watched it. The other question is though, would it have still been sponsored by McDonald's or would it have been Taco Bell?
I don't know. I think Burger King is definitely something that was popping during that time too.
I don't know. Maybe in the sequel, all restaurants are now Taco Bell. They know what to do with the 3 seashells.
Demolition Man jokes never gets old.
Nope. That movie actually, I think, is just tragically underappreciated. It's really quirky. And you know what? I will watch anything that Snipes is in. And actually, you know, if I'm not mistaken, I think the director of Mac and Me, I want to say he actually worked on, in some capacity, Passenger 57.
Really?
Yeah, let me double check. I'm going to fact check myself here. So, his filmography includes, as a screenwriter, he was a screenwriter for Passenger 57. Because I'd never heard of this guy before, and I was trying to.
What movies did he work on?
So he worked on The Tender Warrior, Napoleon and Samantha, The Philadelphia Experiment, The Ice Pirates, Passenger 57, and then besides Mac and Me and Passenger 57, the only other movie that I watched that he either pinned the screenplay for or directed was the ABC Wonderful World of Disney movie, The New Swiss Family Robinson.
I have heard of that.
I watched that back in the day. I think it was like 8, and I liked it then. But
did he direct or did he just pen that?
No, he directed it and wrote the screenplay. But I was really impressed when I found out he did the screenplay for Passenger 57, because I think it's a genuinely good film.
Oh yes.
But pretty much everything else in this list was something I hadn't even heard of. Except I think I knew about The Philadelphia Experiment, which he directed as well. But that's about it. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't go on to do more films.
I feel like Mac and Me was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, maybe.
Except he did the screenplay for Passenger 57 after that. And of course, I think you probably are maybe correct about Mac and Me, because prior to Mac and Me, some of the movies that he worked on, it seemed like had a pretty decent critical reception. Like The Philadelphia Experiment was the winner of the Best Science Fiction Rome International Film Festival and won an award for Best Film at Fanta Festival. But then Mac and Me was also an award-winning film.
Did this win a Razzie?
It won a Golden Razzie for Worst Director, and it apparently tied with Blake Edwards of Sunset, and it was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Screenplay.
Wow.
I gotta say, I don't think it was that bad.
I don't think this movie is necessarily Razzie worthy.
Nor do I. I mean, it has its flaws. It has its glaring flaws.
Oh yeah, but I don't think it's Razzie type flaws.
So what do you think the problem was? Because I have a guess.
I feel like it came out too close to E.T. I feel like people were like, it was obvious of what it was. People were like, why am I going to go see an E.T. ripoff?
Yeah, apparently he wanted he wanted Mac and Me to be sort of the next generation's E.T., which didn't really make a lot of sense because E.T. just came out like 6 years before that.
Right.
So that really didn't make a lot of sense.
E.T. was that generation's E.T.
I think if they'd been spaced out a little more, that would have helped. I think if the plot had been a little bit different and not basically followed almost the exact same plot as E.T., that would have contributed to maybe a better critical and audience reception. And then I think the other quality that probably really hurt this is just all the product placement.
Oh, yeah.
And I think knowing that some of the royalties did go to the McDonald's Foundation does kind of give it a bit more context. But still, it was very heavily... It was. I'd almost call it a propaganda film in some ways.
Especially, I know we keep on talking about McDonald's, but Coke was in this movie just as much.
If not more. I actually think Coke was in this more, and Skittles. But it very much felt like none of the product placement was very subtle.
Right, it's like, he likes Coke. Coke must be like what he drinks on his planet. Here, give him a Coke.
I'd like to give their world a Coke. Yeah, and even in the third act, the alien family is revived with Coke.
Yes.
It literally saves them. So, yeah, I felt like that was a little heavy-handed. And this, in some ways, it's almost like the anti-They Live. It's like they're not even trying to hide the subliminal buy Coke, buy McDonald's messages. They're just very straightforward about it. You don't need any special sunglasses to see the buy Skittles, eat more Skittles, taste the rainbow.
Well, there was even a scene where the older brother, he puts his sunglasses on and he sees Mac and then he takes them off and Mac's not there anymore.
Yeah, and I think when that happened, I even said, is this a They Live prequel? But yeah, so I think if it had been a little less propaganda heavy, if the plot had differed some from E.T. and if it had come out a bit later, I think it probably would have fared better. I read that some of the ways that Mac and Me tried to distinguish itself from E.T., one of the ways was by having the aliens have these like healing powers and destructive powers. But I feel like that's kind of like when Vanilla Ice said, no, this is a different beat than Under Pressure. It has theirs is doom 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 doom, and mine is doom 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 doom. It's like they added one thing and they were like, it's a little different.
Right.
But yeah, because it's just like, it's a well-made film. The score is great. It is both intentionally and unintentionally comedic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I disagree. It's not. This is not Razzie worthy. come on, guys. Yeah, I think it deserves new life, and hope it gets that.
Let's give Mac and me another push, guys. Let's try to get this a steelbook, some new artwork, and get it into showings, and get these actors on the convention circuit. Let's do it.
And you know what? You can't even take my praise as the nostalgia factor, because I never watched this film as a kid. I didn't experience this until right before we watched this episode. We recorded this episode. So yeah, I'm giving a very unbiased opinion here. I'm not looking at it through any rose-colored glasses.
Right, like me, of course.
I'm also not looking at it through any They Live glasses. So why don't we rate this bad boy?
All right, do it up, Mo.
So I am going to give this movie, I'm going to give it a 3.5. I definitely think it has its issues. It's kind of cheesy in places, and it does have some plot holes, notably just how dumb all the parents are. Like, thinking that the kid was the one who put all the plants in their house, or like the teddy bear. The choreographed dance scene was just a bit over the top. It has a little too much product placement, but I thought the little kid as Eric, I thought he did a phenomenal job, gave a stellar performance. I thought Alan Silvestri did a fantastic job scoring this movie. And I feel like there was enough comedy in this, both intentional and unintentional, to really set it apart from E.T. So I almost enjoyed this more than E.T. for that reason. Yeah, I think it's a great movie. It's not perfect, but I think it kind of has that Teen Witch, so bad it's good charm to it.
Mo, I'm just going to give this a smidge more than you. I'm going 3.7 out of 5 stars. This movie has a nostalgia factor to me. That's why I want a little more. I think I pretty much agree with you on everything that you just said. I think that this movie is funny intentionally and unintentionally. I think that the special effects were done well. I think there is blaring flaws. But after over 30 years of this movie being out, I think it's time for this movie to get a revival. And I think that I can overlook some of the blaring concerns in this movie and really enjoy it. It's definitely rewatchable. I would watch this movie again.
Yeah, this is the kind of movie that I would just put on like a rainy day, or if I'm just not feeling well or something.
Right.
Yeah, because, the plot's pretty predictable, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all in this situation. Because it's not about having a mystery between points A and points B. It's about this kind of slapstick comedic journey.
Right. It's not about the result. It's about the journey.
Oh, yeah. And one thing that actually surprised me was this was an Orion Pictures production.
Yes, it was.
And when I saw the Orion screen at the beginning, when we sat down to watch this, I was really confused because I just associate Orion with a bunch of horror movies that I used to watch back in the day, like what, Child's Play?
Yep.
Yeah, and Orion did recently make a comeback, which I've been really pleased with.
Yes.
And I think some of their stuff has been great. Did they do the new Child's Play?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and I still haven't seen that. They also did The Prodigy, which is pretty good. Yeah, this movie's, it's pleasantly surprising. If you haven't seen Mac and Me, we highly suggest you go see it. And if you've seen it before, it is totally worth revisiting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's our show for tonight, guys. Thanks again for listening. If you haven't done so, hit us up on iTunes or wherever you source your podcasts and subscribe. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. It really helps us out. You can go ahead and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Celluloid Fiends. You can follow me at Mitchell C. Long on Twitter and Instagram. And you can check out my film reviews and much more at cupofmo.com.
And if you also want to go to our Facebook page and give us a like, that would be fantastic. For the Celluloid Fiends, I'm Gabriel Orto, and that was Mo Long. And remember, Celluloid Fiends, the truth is out there.